7:37, time for us to welcome a guest into our studio here this morning, Wes Henry, the Chief Product Officer at TrueIT. We use TrueIT for much of our security and internet and things like that we do here to make sure that we stay safe and secure. They do a million different things over there. And when I heard about this story, I watched 60 Minutes about a month ago. They were talking about ransomware. And you hear these stories every so often where somebody gets an email and says, hey, we've encrypted all of your files and you got to pay us $10,000 or we'll keep your data all locked up. And some businesses are like, I don't know how to get it back. So they pay the money. It happens to businesses. It happens to municipalities. It happens to hospitals. And this is some very scary stuff. So I asked if Wes would come over and talk about it for a little bit. Hey, Wes, how are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
I guess this is just the way things are these days, but it's really scary, isn't it?
It is really scary. Ransomware is a serious threat. It's increased tremendously. Most estimates say ransomware is up over 100% in just the last 2 years. And not only are we seeing more and more incidences of ransomware, but they're getting more sophisticated and they're asking for more money and they're going after bigger targets.
How do they do this? How does it work?
So typically, the network or the computer has to get infected somehow, and it gets infected the same way that it would with a virus or other kinds of malware, right? So it exploits security vulnerabilities in the computer itself. You click a link in a malicious email that gets you infected. Sometimes you can get drive-by stuff just by visiting a bad website. So phishing attacks play into there where they trick you into clicking a link in an email that takes you to a site.
Yep.
It might look like a site you're supposed to go to, but it's really there just to infect your computer. And then once the ransomware is on the computer, it's a program. Once it starts running, it just hides itself in the background and runs and encrypts files like crazy. And then eventually you either find out because it notifies you, or you find out typically because you try to open a file and you find out that it's all encrypted and you can't get access to it.
I think we've all done that. We're not proud of it. We're a little embarrassed when it happens, but these emails, they look so legitimate. Sometimes it's with the same kind of graphics and logos that you might get from your real accounts. And it turns out you click on something and you kind of know right away, like, oh, this is starting to feel really fishy to me. And that could be all it takes.
Absolutely. And it used to be that you could see spelling mistakes, grammatical errors or things like that.
Yes.
Sometimes the URLs were really obvious, not what they were meant to be, and so with a little, a little knowledge, a little care, you could kind of sniff those things out. But again, even that's gotten more and more sophisticated. The URLs are really, really close now where they're just off by one letter in a long name, Bank of America, and they put 2 F's in there, something real small that you wouldn't notice. And then the sites that it takes you to look exactly like the ones that they're spoofing, the ones that they're faking. So yeah. Yeah.
And it's not just, you get some lewd image pops up in an email and you think, oh, okay, but it's not just those things that look weird. It's your Verizons, your Googles or whatever. It's stuff that looks like legitimate business emails. So when this happens then and a business finds itself in a situation like this, how often do we catch the bad guys on this?
Well, the actual bad guys almost never get caught. Most of the ransomware stuff is done overseas. A lot of it originates from Russia, from China, things like that. And so, the ability for any law enforcement from the U.S. to go over there and accomplish anything is pretty minor. Now, it does happen, and international agencies work together to find these people and catch them, but it's very, very rare.
Over the next, let's say 10 years, I'm going to ask you just for a little guessing game, just to give us, our listeners, some perspective. What percent of, if you take all the businesses in Fargo-Moorhead, the businesses, the schools, the hospitals, what percent would you guess sometime in the next 10 years are going to have this happen to them?
Well, that's a great question.
Is it half?
That's the first number that comes to my mind.
Is that right? You think maybe half?
The estimates right now in the U.S. is that about every 14 seconds, another business gets attacked with ransomware. And that number is expected to get worse in the future, go down to 10 seconds in the next few years.
And when this happens, you typically get a note. It's like someone kidnapped your kid. Said, hey, give us whatever money or your data is going to be lost forever. And many times the business, the hospital, whatever says, what choice do I have? I've got to pay. And then many times you get it back, but there's no guarantee that they don't do it again or that you get all your data back the way it once was.
That's exactly right. There's no guarantee you get it back. Estimate is about 50% of the time that people pay, they actually do get their files back.
Only 50% of the time.
47% is the current estimate.
Oh my
right now.
gosh. So there's no guarantee you even get your stuff back.
No, and the dollar amount that they're asking for keeps going up, and they are sophisticated where they factor in the size of the organization to what they ask for. You know, for a home user, they might ask for $500, $1,000. For a small business, $5,000. But they've been asking for like $50,000, $100,000 for bigger businesses, cities. Especially if it's someplace where it would be a really big black eye to them to be found out that this happened to them. So there's a little extortion component besides the ransom component.
Now, this obviously affects anybody that would have like an in-house server, in-house computers, things like that, right? What if we said we're not going to take this chance? We're putting everything in the cloud. We're gonna, which I know they allow to do that a lot out of Microsoft. They'll put everything in the cloud. I mean, everything we work on is in the cloud. Does that help? Is that a sales pitch to do that?
It is.
You know.
It is. And going to the cloud used to kind of be the foolproof way to avoid this, but now there are ransomware attacks that even work in the cloud. So it's still a step better to be in the cloud, but it's not foolproof to be in the cloud anymore.
Gotcha.
If someone calls you, Wes, and says, hey, Wes, help, I'm not so sure that our stuff is secure here, what can you do? What are some of the things you can do to help a business protect itself from these things?
Good question. So not to make it too major of a sales pitch, but we actually have a security product, security package that we sell that's kind of not just ransomware, but addresses security across the board, phishing attacks and things like that as well. But just basic things. The number one thing that you want to do to protect yourself is to have great backups. You need to have backups that you can rely on, that you can restore from really fast. Ideally, you'd actually be able to restore that backup somewhere outside of your own network, like restore it to the cloud, for example. And that's the number one thing that you can do to protect yourself.
Very good.
A lot of people think their backups are better than they are. So I would say have two, or at least make darn sure that you've got really good ones and that you know that they're not going to also get infected by the same process.
Small business people, listen to me. We've done this here at the Flag, and it gives me the ability to sleep at night knowing there's people like this that do the work for us. If people want to find out more, Wes, and talk to you about what you might be able to help them with, how do they get a hold of you?
Great question. You can find us on the web at www.TrueIT.com or by phone 701-205-4506.
Okay. Thanks for coming by, Wes. Interesting stuff. We could spend all morning talking about this, but we got the big stuff out. Thank you.
You're welcome.